It may seem like anything goes during wartime, but the truth is there are many internationally prohibited weapons that are so powerful that we should refrain ourselves from using them. Here are the top 10 weapons deemed so deadly that they're prohibited by international agreements. Number 10. Blinding laser beams. Sometime in the mid-1990s, the U.S. Air Force had funded research on how they can destroy eyesight at long distances using high-powered lasers. After all, disrupting the vision of your enemies could help tip the scales of war. During that time, the justification to its development was that it's a more humane weapon than napalm, radiation, or bombs. The research continued until the Human Rights Watch called out the unnecessary danger it could bring. Understanding its impact, the United Nations prohibited the use of laser beams when it adopted the protocol on blinding laser weapons. While the treaty was created over 2 decades ago, its lessons are still felt to this day. It's become the precursor of preemptive banning of weapons that could prove to be very concerning for safety and security. For example, the discussion about lethal autonomous weapons is already leaning towards prohibition, even during its development, much like how it was with blinding lasers. Number 9. Biological weapons. Biological weapons inflict some of the most traumatizing means of devastation, so much so that the 1972 Biological Weapons Convention was made. This was the first multilateral disarmament treaty banning the development, production, and stockpiling of an entire category of weapons of mass destruction. It took full force on March 26, 1975. One such weapon etched in history was Rinderpest, a deadly cattle plague which Genghis Khan used to invade Europe in the 13th century. This resulted to a contagious disease that caused dehydration and eventual death of various animals, upsetting natural ecosystems, as well as human food supplies. But perhaps the most troubling is what they call chimera viruses. This refers to tweaking the genetic structure of viruses, such as anthrax and smallpox, making them even more lethal, potentially triggering 2 diseases at once. For example, the Soviet Union's Chimera project studied the feasibility of combining smallpox and Ebola into one supervirus back in the late 1980s. Just think of the horror such a weapon could bring, and you'd understand why it makes sense to ban these weapons. Number 8. Certain bombs. We all know bombs are destructive forces used in warfare, but the following ones are especially devastating, to the point they have to be prohibited. The cluster bomb, for example, indiscriminately damages civilians, combatants, and even infrastructure. This type of bomb